A book. How do I go into the business of writing book? That was basically the questions I was asked. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'll just write a book that says the business of writing book to answer all their questions. So everything that I had done, everything that I had researched and learned from all the other amazing authors I know, I put them into this book. So it's kind of like a sequel to that book. So when you're done with that one, if you want to continue on your writing career to start a business writing books, this book is the book to go to.
And it does that so well. You arrange it in a particular style. You have 6 parts of the book.
Yes.
But then you start off with a couple of disclaimers, particularly telling us who this book is meant for and who it's not meant for. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
First of all, talking about the style of writing, my style of writing is very simplistic. I like to be able to write a book that a 6-year-old, a 14-year-old can actually read and get published, which has happened a couple of times for me. I get stories of people's parents who tell me that their kids pick up the book and then from what they've read, they can actually write and publish their own books. A kid got published on Amazon by themselves. The part of having a disclaimer for this particular book is because we understand that many times people expect to get the same kind of results that the author is getting by following it, and when they don't get the same kinds of results, they throw a fit and say all sorts of things, forgetting that circumstances are different, environments are different, timing is different, so many other factors come into play, and I stress that in the disclaimer so people can understand that yes, even though this is a guide and you're meant to follow it, you should also understand that you should contextualize your own process,
which is
so that
very
it works
important.
for you.
But you also mentioned that this is not necessarily a book for fiction writers. Why so?
Well, I am mostly a non-fiction author, although I started in fiction. I started in poetry and short stories. But this book was specifically written with my background in non-fiction as a guide, as a stepping stone, basically. So the things that I share in this book may not necessarily work the same way for fiction authors. So I usually, I have friends, I have colleagues, I have people I have worked with and trained who have been able to build a business as fictional authors, and this is something that I've recently started, creating as a class on my own, but in collaborations with those people. Because yes, I'm very good when it comes to book writing, but I like to leave the fiction work to the experts who can actually do that.
Good point, because you also raised that point in the book that there is, some people want to write as a means to further or build their influence or further their influence. There were 2 other common reasons that are usually, and your approach is to combine all 3. Why that approach of combining all 3 motivations in consideration of the why for this book?
I like to be able to explore different options and again see how I can combine different options to produce a very unique result. So I give 3 major reasons for which people usually write their books, either to make money, or to establish themselves as authorities in their niches, or to build influence. But if you're going into the business itself, it is important that you make money, because with business you must make profit. It is also important that you are an expert. You establish yourself as an authority, because that also helps people to build trust in your brand. And then influence is also important. You really can't do much today in today's world and grow your business without having influence. So whether you are building influence in your business, whether you're building influence in your church, whether you're building influence to win a political seat, or so on and so forth, influence is important, and learning how to communicate your words in written words and communicate your plans and your manifesto is important as well.
The book is available here in Nigeria where we are, but would you say that the ideas that are covered in the book applied to young people across the continent?
Absolutely. This is written with a very globalistic perspective in mind, and it was also published internationally as well. And I can tell you that most of the sales of this particular book in Amazon Kindle don't even come from Nigeria. Wow. They come from other countries like South Africa, like Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, and then even in the United States and in the UK. Okay. I know there's a shop in the UK that regularly buys my books on Amazon in bulk and then stocks it in their shop. Sure. So it shows that they like the book, they like the ideas of the book. The reviews I've gotten are also from international customers as well. So it goes to show that the ideas in this book also apply across board. Nigeria is not necessarily unique when it comes to the ideas in this book. It covers across the continent.
Now there's something you do in the book. The last segment is what they don't tell you. Why did you name it that?
The reason why I name what they don't tell you is because many times they don't tell you some of the things that are involved when it comes to building a business. You see a lot of young people like myself, for example, attend seminars that older people who are successful and established in business are speaking at. And then we ask questions like, oh, what's the secret to your success? How are you able to build your success? And they tell you, oh, hard work and determination. Those are nice, but yeah, I want to know the how. And there's some other things to business besides, oh, go and get a loan or have a business plan. And those are the things I cover in that part of what they don't tell you. Things like you will get tired and exhausted. You need to know how to take a break. Things like, you need to know how to balance your work and your family. We no longer talk about work-life balance. We talk about work-life integration. How do you do that? How personal development is important to your growth as a business person. All of these things I cover in that part.
But then what really gets me is that the first thing you speak about is integrity. Why?
For me, one of my greatest values is integrity. Being able to do what you said you would do when you would do it. In an age and time where people are becoming very distrusting of brands, because of all the amazing things that are happening and our exposure to very quick information, it's important that you stand out as a brand by having integrity. Yeah. You being able to be a trusted brand, because nowadays people are not just buying because your brand is everywhere. They're buying because they have a relationship with you. And relationships are built on trust, and trust is built on integrity. So integrity is a very integral part of doing business, whether you're a writer, whether you're an author. If you want people to take you seriously, if you want people to continue to listen to you and to basically work with you and build your influence, you need integrity.
Okay, well, we'll take a short break, and when we come back from that break, we'll talk about how this book addresses a challenge that we have on the continent, which is publishing. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back from the break with Edirin.
Africa is rising. Again, we hear our sounds echo on the other side. Afrobeat and Afropop reinvented, hip life brought back to life, new energy infused into Kwaito and Kwela. Africa is balling. Every stroke, every shot, every raise, we find our place at the top. Taking the helm of real power, new hopes for democracies. A breed of entrepreneurial tigers, audacious storytellers, and a promising generation raring to go. Truly, Africa is rising. And this is where the stories that define our continent live.
Welcome back to Literati. Our guest today, Edirin Edewor, is talking to us about her book, The Business of Writing Books. It's the follow-up to an equally amazing book, The A to Z of ebook publishing. And she's an award-winning, I did mention that we would speak about that. We know that a lot of you are interested in this subject, so please feel free to join the conversation. Our handle on social media is News Central TV, and you could just add the hashtag NC Literati to join the conversation. So Edirin, before the break, we talked about integrity and why this is essentially what forms the bedrock of the trust that people have with any brand, including writers who, they buy your books to get into that. But one of the other things that you seem to be attempting to address is the challenge of writers getting their book out to the public. What is the situation with that?
A lot of people who have manuscripts, a lot of writers who want to get published still believe that they have to have their manuscripts picked up by a traditional publishing house before they can actually get published. When I wrote my very first book back in 2016, I didn't even know that I could even talk to people in publishing houses. I didn't think that, they would even listen to me. So I went online and Googled how to publish my book by myself. That was basically what I did. And I found out, you could publish your book onto platforms like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Okada Books and so on and so forth. So I took the Amazon route because it seemed easier for me to learn. And I did that, and I had amazing support from Facebook groups, people who are my friends on Facebook groups, and the book became a bestseller, and I've been able to replicate that over and over and over again. And I realized that a lot of authors who come to me telling me they want to get their books published, but they don't have the funds to do so. They don't still understand the process of self-publishing. It's a much easier route to go when you are an author who doesn't necessarily have the funds to, go through the traditional route or still getting rejected by traditional publishing houses. A lot more books are published today, in today's day and age now, because a lot of people now know how to publish their books by themselves. You don't necessarily now need a huge publishing house to pick up your work or even make money from your book like I've done. So all my books have been self-published, and I've been able to help nearly 1,000 people get their books published by themselves as well, using my first book, The A to Z of ebook publishing. So what I attempted to address in this book was helping people to understand that you don't need a ton of money to get published. You can do it by yourself, like I did, and I've done that by example as well. And when it comes to promoting your work, you still don't need a publishing house. You can build your reader audience using social media, which is one of the blessings of social media that we have today. You can build a large audience with social media, build your reader audience, build your influence, and go on to other amazing things. I like to use myself as an example because I'm a teacher by experience. So I experience things and then I go and teach how it's done. I learn the process of everything I did, all the failures and all the successes, and I teach it. And once I'm able to do that, other people are able to replicate my processes and also get basically the same results as well.
But listening to you talk about this, there are a few questions that quickly jump to mind. The first is, what happens to standards? People would say that the traditional route in some way or form ensures that standards are maintained through the editing process that precedes publication. When you do that yourself, you skip that process. And so how do writers get that much needed feedback or editing that, that should precede the work?
Self-publishing doesn't necessarily mean you don't get an editor to edit your work.
Okay.
You can do that. Again, we live in a world where we have amazing collaborations. You can't decide to speak to an editor, hey, I don't have money to pay you, but how about you edit the work for me? And then when the process of the book comes, I can give you X amount of money, or I can give you X percentage from my book sales.
Yeah, but that's the argument that, it becomes optional, no longer a requirement. I mean, because one who understands, it's necessary to have this done, will see the need to make this kind of arrangement. What about those? So essentially, the argument against it, or one of the concerns, is that we're going to obviously have a lot more people choose the easier route, which is to just put it out there without it being edited. And that, in a sense, dilutes the entire picture, because we now have a lot more that is not up to standard, so to speak. And that affects a growing industry, a growing field, a growing literary space.
Personally, I believe that the literary space has grown because of self-publishing. So it's a blessing. And yes, standards have been affected. And I believe that there are many things that we can do as regards, having standards. For example, publishing on platforms like Amazon and Okada Books, they have their own standards. That even if you're publishing by yourself, you have to follow those standards. And if you skip the standards and somehow your books get approved to be published on those standards, people get to buy them. They will give you the negative reviews. And once I come to a book that I want to buy and see all the negative reviews, I would not buy it. So in the end, the author gets to suffer for not, implementing standards. So even though we encourage self-publishing, we always also encourage that you publish it up to standard. That is why we do trainings, we do teachings, we do seminars to educate people on the standards that are acceptable. Do you understand? So that is one. Two, it's also important that we understand that times have changed. Gone are the days where you see young people actually sit down and read several hundred pages of books, especially when it's non-fiction. When it's fictional books, yes, we can. We're excited for the stories. But when it's non-fiction, many times you really want to just get to what the book is about. So people like us who are young and millennials who don't necessarily have the patience to go through tons and tons of materials and fluff, which many traditional houses usually do to make their books look very nice and appealing. We would rather get books that are simple, straight to the point, deliver on the message that they're supposed to deliver. And if your audience is also young millennials, you will find that you get a lot of people who are attracted or who are, drawn towards your kind of writing because it's easy for them to then read a book back to back and get the information that they need.
What was your own experience trying to get published? I mean, you mentioned that you ended up having to go the self-publishing route, but what were some of the challenges you had? Did you actually pitch the books to any traditional publishers and go through the rejection phase?
Oh, I didn't, to be honest.
Okay.
I didn't go through that phase because I didn't even think that I could even, I didn't know how to go and start approaching a publisher or to go and pitch my ideas. My first book was written from a place of desperation. I had been diagnosed with early onset rheumatoid arthritis back then in 2016. So it was my attempt at trying to not be depressed. And I wrote that book to basically tell myself that, hey, you don't have to go through all the things you've gone through before. You can do something of yourself. But it took me hours and hours of studying. It took me hundreds and hundreds of dollars of paying for online courses from people who were experts in self-publishing to learn the process of publishing by myself. And now I'm able to write a book so that people don't have to pay what I paid to be able to get the same results that I got.
I think that's also something that seems to characterize your work. You seem, like you said, you learn and then teach by experience. So you experience something and then you teach it. Which brings me to, you did casually mention that you write short stories and poems, and then the Open Network. What does Open stand for?
Open stands for Online Publishers and Entrepreneurs Network. It's a community that's of writers, authors, and entrepreneurs. It was initially ebook profits mastery, so it was dedicated to only people who want to publish books, so it was only for authors. But when the vision began to expand, I started to see that there's a lot more I could do with writing and publishing and the business of writing books. I then expanded the group and the vision to include writers who may not necessarily be authors and published, and entrepreneurs who want to improve their writing skills so they can build influences in their business.
You said something recently, and let me quote you directly, and I want you to expand on why this is important. You said, "I want the world to finally hear African stories told by Africans." Why? And why now? Okay. And how are you doing that?
Okay. For a very long time, it's been difficult for us to find recorded history of Africans. We know about the Alexandria Library that was burnt in medieval times, and we really don't have written down history. What we know of our history is what our colonizers and what people from outside of Africa have told us. So it's important for us at this day and age, now that we have the power to be able to write and to be able to immortalize our stories, to be able to put them down correctly. Because we don't want a situation again in this day and age where we have other people telling our stories for us when we have our own voice to do so. And nothing could be even further from the truth when it comes to stories like, Black Panther, for example, which is of African origins but was told by somebody who's not necessarily African. And it was a breakthrough when the movie was well received all over the world. It basically broke a lot of world records. And it showed us that there is a yearning for African stories. And the movie was directed by a black person. There are a lot of African influences in the movie, and it showed that we have a lot to offer.
Yeah.
So I believe that us being able to tell our stories and put them on an international platform so that they can be told on a global stage is very important, so that people can understand that, hey, these people are telling their stories. It's better we listen to them than to listen to what we are being fed here.
I think key to that is part of what you've also kind of mentioned is if we're going to present our stories, whether fictional or non-fictional, on a global stage, we should do that at the point of proficiency and not tokenism. What I mean by that is we shouldn't expect that, okay, just to fill the quota will be taken, but like the Black Panther example you've made, it made billions of dollars because it was a very well-made movie.
Exactly.
And a very well-told story, not simply because it's simply an African story. We'll take a short break again, and when we come back, we will talk about a few other things that I really like about this book and the open network, because we want to know how do we get onto the open network for anybody who's interested in that, and what are some of the exciting stories that have come out of there. And then we'll go into the flash bowl and find out more about the book when we come back.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we're still on Literati, and we have the wonderful Edirin Edewor talking to us about her book, The Business of Writing Books. Well, her book, The Business of Writing Books. But we're talking about your work with the Open Network and how, quite a number of people, thousands of people are on this network. It's a social media based network. Can you tell us some success stories that have come out of that?
That group was founded on the 20th of June 2017 when I launched my very first public book, The A to Z of eBook Publishing. So it was a group that I created to launch the book because, again, I didn't have money to launch physically. So I was like, hey, you know what? Can I do this online? So I said, okay, maybe I could create a Facebook group, have a few people join in, talk to them about an amazing topic, and then pitch my book, which was a success. But after that was done, we decided to then stay on. So I continued to give value, and then it grew. And today, we have over 24,000 members in the community now. And it's a closed community, so it's not like it's a public community that anybody can join. We have strict approval processes, but it's grown to over 24,000 people. And I always like having fun. I always like switching things up. So many of the things that we've done on the community are things that probably never been done before. Okay. Something like our annual 28 Days Writing Challenge, which usually holds either in September or November. This year we had the 3rd edition, which just completed. Okay. And between the last 2 years when we started and now, we've had over 3,000 people submit posts for the writing challenge. So the writing challenge is not necessarily to see who's the best writer. It's to help people build consistency and help them build their writing skills. So it's a platform where expert writers and upcoming writers can basically compete on the same level. So we don't judge them on how good their writing is. We judge them based on the Facebook's algorithm, on how often they post and how they engage with their audiences and all of that. And it's been really amazing. We've had over 340,000 engagements and posts in these 28 days alone. So it's been really great. Another thing that we also recently introduced was the Open Awards, where we basically give awards to people from 10 different categories for the year in view. We started that in 2018, and we're doing another edition again this 2019. We've grown so much that we're now having external sponsors. I used to to do everything basically from my heart and my pocket. But this year I've grown to have amazing sponsors who've helped us with that as well. Another thing that we've been able to accomplish is out of the members who are openers, we've had 1,000 books published in the past 3 years, which is an amazing feat, and it really lends credence to the power of self-publishing.
What's the spread of that across the continent?
Well, the largest population is obviously from Nigeria, but we have our top 5 countries represented on the group are Nigeria, the USA, Ghana, UK, South Africa. Then we have Cameroon, we have Togo, we have Republic of Benin, we have Kenya, we have Tanzania, we have Burundi. Nice. In the community as well. The group is made up of people from 100 countries. That's quite
a wide spread across the continent. Okay, yes. This is very good to hear. And I mean, so what should we expect coming next from Edirin?
It's been phenomenal because the opportunities that have opened up for me, being a creator of this community are endless. I've been invited to international events. Last year was Social Media Week in Nairobi. Then there was a mentorship masterclass in Nairobi and Tanzania. I've been able to create my own event, my own international event, the Breakthrough Experience Business Retreat, which is held in Dubai. I was able to take 4 speakers and delegates from Nigeria to attend that event as well. I've been made the director of a book prize for the Book House Book Prize. So many amazing opportunities have come up, and what I want to do going forward is to open avenues to a younger audience, because in the community we have young people, but there are a lot of younger people. So we want to be able to create an offline event for younger people to help them to grow their writing skills. I believe that helping young people do that will help them communicate better in school and communicate better in life as well.
I completely agree with that. So thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Literati. You can follow us on social media at News Central TV, #NCLiterati to join the conversation. And thank you so much, Edirin, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Until next time, stay